Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the media and the general reactions and coverage of this ongoing health scare. We've already discussed how they're trying to fearmonger this thing like crazy extensively. And also, of course, they're trying to blame everything on our dear old president Donald J. Trump. You know, the one guy trying to help us all through this. Trump's formed task force, closed borders, paused travel, and even he's ushered in what some are now calling Trump bucks, or stimulus payments going directly to Americans in a time where we need all the support we can get. But despite all of that, we of course are still seeing stark opposition, mostly from the liberals who are running and pushing their propaganda through the mainstream media. Now, we've talked about this bias a number of times before already. For example, I've already mentioned Obama here a few times because, believe it or not, but he too had a similar health scare during his own administration back in 2015, but you probably don't know much about that, nor do you recall the swine flu epidemic much at all. And that's because it was largely glossed over by the mainstream media, who covered it occasionally, sure, but it never got close to the panic that's been created around this situation and current health scare now. And the reasons for that are pretty obvious to most of us. Not only is Obama a Democrat who got his ass kissed by the media for over a decade, but also that epidemic didn't happen on an election year either. This year, 2020, is one, and this November we'll all be voting for president once again. So that's a big reason why the media and many liberal politicians and supporters, they're not only trying to pin this one on Trump as hard as possible, but they're also trying to overhype this scare while also being willing to crash our economy and kill our momentum and spirits as a way to get an advantage in the election this fall. More on this story and we'll get right into this main topic very soon, but first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. With everyone now working from home, VPN security is now a requirement. So with more and more hackers and identity thieves on the prowl out there, if you don't have a VPN yourself that's protecting your internet traffic, now's a great time to get one. And Virtual Shield has the easiest and fastest VPN on the market, and they're offering a free 30-day trial now too. So since it's free, why not give it a try today? Help me help you, and let's all help each other. And let's all have a great, safe, secure internet experience while surfing the web as usual. Thanks for your time today, and now back to the show. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's get back into it. Now, for today, I don't want to just talk about Obama and compare the current situation with old news anymore. No, I've got another current and probably more apt comparison to show you how biased and anti-American and anti-Trump the press can truly be. During this crisis, I've started to notice some great double standards out there between how the media approaches covering America and our leader, Donald J. Trump, versus how they treat our northern neighbors, Canada, and their leader, Justin Trudeau, and his handling of things. Now, I'm not actually too familiar with Canada and their leader's reaction too specifically, although I did hear that Trudeau's wife had caught the virus, unfortunately. I think she'll be okay, but that is still truly upsetting. Hopefully, though, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is doing a better job at keeping his population healthy, unlike his family, but also, this isn't exactly about that either. I'm sure Canada is fine, but if you listen to the media about this, you would think they are doing great or even better than before. Judging by the way the press slams Trump at every chance, while also praising stark liberals like Trudeau in Canada, well, you would think their reactions were actually far different, but in actuality, I'm here to tell you they're not. In fact, you could even say the US and Canada had similar reactions to all of this, all things considered. Both closed borders, issued quarantine orders, and set up relief stimulus packages with similar payouts actually. And really the only thing that's actually far different is the way these two places are being covered in the news. The mainstream media can't help but put their opinions and political stances into everything. And that's why America and Trump get shit on constantly, because we're currently conservative led. And on the flip side, Canada and Trudeau get overly praised because they're socialist, virtual communist, and the most social justice warrior leaning country in our hemisphere. For today's example, one of the first places I started to notice this difference happened while I was looking at the titles of some videos on the internet. After you watch some political news or commentary stuff, YouTube will eventually start recommending you more. But after a while, you start to notice all the titles seem to be against Trump. And then in turn, when something from another leader comes up, and if they're liberal like Trudeau, well, they'll get the most generous treatment possible. Now, this is true for most liberals mentioned in the press, especially when compared to President Trump, but a certain news station was being far too blatant with it for my liking, and also they started favoring the Canadian Justin Trudeau far too much for my taste as well. The channel we're talking about and the one in question is none other than NowThis News. They're a pretty notoriously left-wing SJW-style news outlet who we've also covered here numerous times over the years. And this time I want to start by going over some of their titles. Then we'll get to some clips and video examples too. For starters though, here are the latest videos from NowThis at the time of making my own video today. Here it's not so bad, but you can start to see the lean already. First video says Trump celebrates truck drivers. Not much to see here unless NowThis is implying this isn't important or something. Next, the UK health officials get pretty fair titles, likely because they're stark leftists over there across the pond too. And then Democrat Governor Cuomo also gets a fair headline as well because NowThis isn't afraid to show their bias. More telling though is the final video here, it being a supercut called Questions Trump Doesn't Like, clearly implying he's weak or evasive or hiding something negative. I guess because he won't take certain questions or whatever. Next, let's finally compare America versus Canada head to head here. First, here's the last 4 videos NowThis made about Justin Trudeau. And aside from Trudeau looking rather disheveled and distressed, there's not much else to notice here. Just some standard and ordinary titles and thumbnails about a leader's press conferences. But apparently, this isn't how they cover everyone else, especially conservatives. No, people like Trump don't get fair and neutral coverage at all. Just look at the difference when NowThis covers the US president and his very similar press conferences. Instead of just saying US president gives an update like what they did with Trudeau in Canada, well, for America's case, they're saying they're fact-checking the White House press briefings. And that's not obviously too terrible, but it is subtly awful, especially when you think about it. You see, with Trudeau, it's just a straightforward presentation of his briefing and information. But with Trump, they frame it as them fact-checking his claims like they're smarter than him or something. They act like they're the gatekeepers of the truth. And that already implies there's some lies and false information in the Trump briefings too, which is what warrants this constant fact-checking they claim is necessary. And well, that's pretty rich coming from these hack news fake reporters at the NowThis company. I mean, who are they to assume moral authority about anything anyway? They're just some rich liberal fake news mill funded by deep state globalists sent in to destabilize and vilify our country, while also propping up and glorifying shitty countries that are in fact doing worse, like, oh, Canada. Now, with all that said, let's next turn to checking out some of these heavily biased videos. First, let's look at some of the NowThis coverage of the most recent Trudeau update. Take a look.
While we're doing everything to keep people safe in our respective countries, we also have to help more vulnerable nations fight this virus by providing more support for their healthcare systems, debt relief, and other forms of assistance. We will keep working together as partners to ensure the safety and health of people around the world.
Well, I would start and focus on helping your own people first, but hey, I'm just a simple man with simple pleasures. Sounds to me like Trudeau is trying to virtue signal here though, starting his speech by pretending he's this big hero for trying to help everyone else, largely neglecting his own people who are the ones who elected him after all. Speaking of helping foreign nations, there are some reports that Trudeau gave over $800,000 to the same Wuhan lab where this terrible disease had originated. Wouldn't be too surprising either, since the socialists in Canada are all too happy to help and support and defend the likes of this Far East Middle Kingdom, that communist shithole where this problem came from. But let's not get too sidetracked by this content. The presentation and tone of things is what we're more concerned with today. Like, for example, Trudeau here is just being filmed straight up. NowThis is basically just restreaming his press conference without any commentary or angle to it at all. Even their title is the most basic and straightforward way it can be put. And this already starkly differs from the way they show the Trump press conferences. The titles there alone are already being presented unfairly with the fact-checking premise. But just wait until you see what they actually do in their videos of them. It really shows the stark difference here, so just take a look at the latest NowThis video about Trump for yourselves, right here.
Have been doing this for about a month now because when the president comes out and speaks to the press in this room, his remarks are not always fact-based. And while we want to share his words with you because they shape the events in our country, we don't want to give them to you without the appropriate context.
Right. How brazen and overly confident do you have to be to think your views and your ideas of the truth supersedes the president of this great country? He was elected by millions of Americans, by the way, and now this? They're just some far-left think tank funded by independent Democrats trying to spread their party's propaganda. Yet still, they think they are the truth-sayers, and whatever they deem as important or factual is for them to judge and present to us like they're some kind of all-seeing God or something. What a joke. And funny how they don't have any sort of commentary on the Trudeau press conferences at all, even though he would likely be lying or spreading false information too. Possibly. I don't know though. Maybe Justin just virtue signals about helping other countries for 30 minutes. I don't know enough about that yet, but certainly we can all see how unfair and biased this whole thing is. Trudeau gets fair titles and a straight presentation of his speech, while Trump gets so-called fact-checked, implying he's lying from the start, and even they have this annoying NowThis host calling his pressers not factual from the get-go.
The president has not been good at demonstrating the behavior he is urging Americans to take on. So the president should be out at any moment. When he comes out, I will shut up until he says something that requires further context. But
I don't think you're quite using that term context right here, buddy. You said that at the beginning earlier too, but I'm not sure you really know what that means. At the very least, you're not using the term accurately, because you breaking down the president's speech and supposedly fact-checking it, well, that's not really providing it context. I don't even know if you can provide someone else's speech context, because you're not in the president's head and you don't know what he's thinking and what he's trying to say. And perhaps if he said something wrong, like say Easter was on Saturday, well, then you could fact check him and say, no, it was actually on Sunday. But what it appears you're actually about to do is commentate and refute the president and his points, which has little to do with fact checking or creating context at all. Those are just the cool, smart sounding terms you're choosing to use to put a spin on this and make it out so you're this real reporter, when really your whole operation is full of fakes and phony balonies. Lastly, before we go, I want to clear up some misconceptions and confusion about the government support coming from both the American country, us, and Canada, because there's a lot of false and misleading information out there, which also has to do with America getting biased anti-US coverage, while Canada of course gets propped up and supported because they toe the line with leftists. For example, many were responding to this tweet, which tries to church up Canada's situation while also bashing the US's. It says, do you know that Canadians are getting $2,000 a month for the next several months? Also, they already have universal health care, so they don't have medical expenses at all. When will Americans stop celebrating the crumbs we are given by our so-called government? Don't know why government's in quotes. We do have a government. I don't know why you're suggesting we don't. And well, here's the thing about the rest of what you said, lady. First of all, not all Canadians are getting that $2,000 per month. That only goes to those who lost their jobs during this disaster. And in addition, America also has unemployment type plans and benefit increases ourselves. For example, as part of our relief plan in America, we're adding an additional $600, which you can get from unemployment now, which in some states comes out to around $1,100 per week or per 2 weeks, depending on the system. Plus, they also added more weeks and more people who can get on unemployment, so that's more benefits we're getting, and so on. And also, it's worth pointing out the stimulus grants we're all about to get too, or some of us already got, which comes out to $1,200 per person, plus $500 per dependent child. And this, of course, sounds less since unemployed Canadians get $2,000, but you also have to remember, 2,000 Canadian dollars only equals about 1,400 US. So sure, that's about 200 more for Canadians then, but that's also only once a month if they lost their jobs. But our $1,200 first stimulus, on the other hand, goes out to everyone, and our unemployment can easily come out to more than that 1,400 depending on your former job hours and payouts. Finally, this tweeter also falsely claims that Canadians don't have any medical expenses at all. And this is wildly not true, since at the very least, for starters, they're paying a lot more in taxes to fund their bloated socialist so-called free healthcare system. And in addition, there's still fees and deductibles and other payments and costs that go along with that too, which are conveniently ignored to further this false liberal narrative. What do you guys think about all this? Have you seen and noticed this bias in coverage from the media? Why do you think they favor Canada over the US? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.